Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Doua, or for the non-Arab speakers, Doua, like Doua Lipa. And as Zaid said, I am here tonight to share a very touching story, a very personal story. I am a very proud stage 3 colorectal cancer survivor. Thank you. Thank you so much. I've been in remission now for 2.5 years, inshallah 3 years in February. It's the first time I share my story publicly. I've shared this story so many times with many people that I've been meeting along the way of my healing. But this is the first time I'm sharing it publicly. And I will start with 2 things. The first one is thank you to Zaid for giving me this space to share it. Thank you to my family and my friends, the ones that have actually been here and part of my story. To the familiar faces and new faces as well. Thank you so much for being here and wanting to hear all the beautiful stories we have, mine included. The second thing I wanted to say before I start is a mini disclaimer, because as I mentioned, I'm a survivor of colorectal cancer. And we are in October, as you guys know, it's pink, right? It's all about breast cancer. And this cancer is not necessarily the most glamorous to talk about, which my assumption is, if you think about the part of the body in which the cancer is, colon and the rectum, let me just say, metaphorically speaking and literally speaking, there's a lot of shit talk, a lot of poop talk, okay? And my assumption is it's probably one of the reasons why we don't talk about it. So I'm gonna spare you guys the details. It's a mini disclaimer because if we do get a chance later to talk one-on-one, I'm happy to answer any questions. So here goes. I thought a lot about how I wanna share the story. And what's beautiful about my story is that there's so many different layers. There's the part of me as a woman, me as a mother, me as a person, as a human. There's a lot of lessons that were learned, a lot of lessons that I'm able to teach today, thanks to this experience. But I didn't really want it to, I shared this story with a lot of people. And I thought, let me just share it in the most authentic way, literally as if I'm sharing a story without, like Zaid said, there's no big lesson learned, right? So my diagnosis happened in September of 2022. As you guys can imagine, it was a big shock. I was only 32 at the time. And to give you a bit of context before getting to the diagnosis part of the story, in 2020, I had ended my marriage. So I was new to being a single parent in Dubai, which is not an easy thing to do, just being a single parent in general, let alone in Dubai. And so I was navigating, single parenting, getting fit again, getting my mental health, getting back to, a job, getting my shit together, right? So by July 2022, I started getting a lot of the symptoms, which I didn't know about, which I'll get to a bit later because it is important to talk about the symptoms, which I had ignored. And so in July 2022, my body started showing a lot more symptoms. We had gone to Morocco to travel. It was my first trip since COVID, right? So it was a big thing for us to travel all together as a family back home. And so I was seeing the symptoms, but I was ignoring them. To go back a bit backwards, Zaid and I agreed on the title of the story to be When the Body Screams, because you'll understand by the end of the story how my body was literally screaming and I was not listening. I didn't know what the symptoms were. So comes now September 2022 and the symptoms are getting a lot stronger, a lot more visible. There's bleeding, there's cramps, there is pain, but not as strong as you would think for it to be stage 3 cancer, let alone cancer as well, right? By mid-September, I had so much pain that I called my sister who's here, Dalia, and I told her I'm not feeling okay. There's this cramp that's happening, but it's not my period. It's not what I ate. I just couldn't tell what it was. And so she told me, so by that time I was already bleeding. And so she said, if you get blood and it's not your period, that's when you need to go and see a doctor. And I was like, yeah, obviously it seems logical, but for me at the time, I was so unaware and so not conscious of so many things that I was like, why would I go to the emergency? Anyways, long story short, I went to the doctor. The first doctor, believe it or not, actually misdiagnosed me. He had given me antibiotics. He told me to come back in 2 weeks and told me, come back in 2 weeks, we'll get you checked again. Inshallah, you'll be fine. And so by that time, my pain was not going. I still had the symptoms. Everything was still not okay. And that's when my sister again told me, she's like, that's not okay, go get another opinion. right? So I get another opinion, I go see a gastro, we get ultrasounds, we get blood tests done, nothing shows up in the test, nothing, not even the cancer markers. The cancer markers were not showing high. So there's no sign at this point that I have cancer. So now we're reaching roughly 20th of September. And so again, nothing's working, I'm still getting all of the symptoms. And by then, khalas, the gastro told me, okay, you know what, we need to do a colonoscopy. And I think by then he already had an idea that it was going to be cancer, but of course you can't say anything until you get the results of the biopsy, right? So I go and I get the colonoscopy done, which is horrible, by the way. Did anyone here ever get a colonoscopy done before? It's terrible. You gotta fast, there's like a lot of things happening, disgusting, and you can't eat, right? So I get the colonoscopy done, and I swear to God, the results, obviously they give you the results immediately. And honest to God, my then 6-year-old could have known it's cancer. Like, we look at the image, if you remember, we looked at the pictures, and you could tell it's a non-benign tumor. You could tell that it's not okay. But again, I think in so much denial that I'm like, no, inshallah, all is good. I'm taking my antibiotics. I'm gonna go see the other useless doctor at this point. And then, fast forward to the 20th of September. So by then, between the colonoscopy, the results, they took a sample of it, they did the biopsy. And unfortunately, I get called into the doctor, which by then, by the way, my sister, my ex-husband then, I had the rest of my family online, they were connected, because I think you guys all had a feeling. I was just the only one flying and thinking, no, I'm okay. And then so we get to the doctor, and then he starts explaining the results to me, and then there it was, the moment where he said to me, he's like, you have stage 3 colorectal cancer. And I swear to God, I think I even remember the time, I think it was 10 a.m., and I just could not believe it. The level of denial, the level of disbelief, the PTSD that happened from that moment. I went from this awesome single mom living my life in Dubai, getting my shit together, my job, parenting, you name it. I had literally gotten my shit together by then, and then I get this news. And that's part of my story. It's a big milestone, I want to say, because I was doing so well physically. And that's one of the things, again, part of my story, the mental part of my healing. When I left my ex-husband, I was not really taken care of. Because what I see today is that cancer, to me, is very emotional. Cancer is very mental. And so if you think about where the tumor was growing, it is, again, like I said earlier, literally where the shit is, right? Your number 2 goes from there. So metaphorically speaking, it was literally me holding on to so much emotions and so much shit that I was probably going through for God knows how long. But it was all staying there. And so in my 2 years before the diagnosis, what I was doing everything right. I was working out, I was losing weight, I had a job, I was literally everything green flag, alhamdulillah, until the diagnosis, right? So now this is to give you the context of before the diagnosis. Now we are at the diagnosis, September 22. And so what happens after that, I'm officially now a cancer patient by then, and it's really, really, I don't know, it's a weird phase, because I went from this self-sufficient woman to become a cancer patient, and all of a sudden I have this label. And there's so many things, again, like I said, there's so many layers to the story. There is, how do I break the news to people? I was working. You start prioritizing who you have to say this to. I had given the charge to my sister Dalia to share it with the family. I had some of my friends here to share the news with some friends. I couldn't share it with so many friends because I was so overwhelmed. And of course, I had to share with work because I had presentations due in 48 hours and I couldn't be there for that. So it's a very weird thing to say, even today, standing here to say I had cancer is hard. Of course, I'm grateful, alhamdulillah, that I had it. It's part of my past. But even then, I think I probably said the statement in the present tense probably 5 times. I couldn't say it. It was so hard. There was this dissociation, this belief of this is not me. And so what happened during the month of October, there was a lot of things. You become literally a bit of a rat lab, right? There's all the PET scan, CT scan, blood test, MRI, you name it. I was literally being called in. every 2 days to get a test done, right? So it's very uncomfortable. Again, the part of the body that we're talking about is not necessarily the most glamorous, right? And so the month of October was all about that. It was all about, okay, let's see what we can do. I remember we got second and third opinions. And by mid of October, khalas, I found my oncologist back then. And my mom flew in and we felt good about him. So we decided to go with this guy. And so because I was so young, they said to me, so my first oncologist was like, you know what, we're gonna do 3 months of chemo and then 3 months of radiation. But he was speaking Chinese to me. I didn't understand these. Like some of the terms that they use sometimes in medicine, it was so overwhelming to me, I couldn't understand it. And that's why we ended up going with another doctor who actually dumbified the language of oncology, right? And so instead of doing 3 months, because I was so young, they said I could do like a short course therapy, which is essentially like 1 week of radiation, which is targeted around where the tumor was. And then I think it was 4 rounds of chemotherapy. And the reason why I don't know is because I actually didn't go through the whole chemotherapy, and I'll get to that in a bit. So by October, I decided I'm gonna go ahead with the short course. I'm like, I'm gonna do this. But what's important about the month of October was not only the fact that of course I had to go and look for other doctors, all those tests I had to do, but there was a moment, a very important moment in the journey as a cancer patient where I had this moment of acceptance. There was a light bulb moment where I'm like, because before obviously at the diagnosis, I'm like, I'm in shock. I can't think, my brain's shutting down. I don't know what to do. But then there's a point where I don't know, I think I got up and I was like, I'm gonna fight this. But at the same time, you don't know what's gonna happen. So there's this concept of in Arabic, which we call tawakkul in Islam, tawakkul and taslim, where I was like, I am in God's hands. If this is my story, for me to maybe, this is the end of my life, then so be it. My son's gonna be with his dad, there's family, it's gonna be fine. But the concept of me accepting whatever outcome was gonna happen from then was, I think, what built my mental resilience throughout the treatment, yeah? And that was very, very hard. I actually realized that a few years ago. Like, how did I actually go through it? Because when I share my story to people that I meet, they ask me a lot of questions, and that's one of them. They're like, how did you do it? And I'm like, they're like, oh, yeah, you're so strong. And I'm like, but I don't really have a choice. At this point, it's either you die or you survive, but you don't know. So you kind of have to wrap your head around the idea of both outcomes and accept them, right? So I think that was my month of October. Khalas, I'm like, okay, let's do this. And so I went from self-sufficient, independent single mom in Dubai to cancer patient, and now I'm like in fight mode, right? And so I start the radiation, I start the chemotherapy, and I had decided, I don't know if you guys, I feel like you guys probably have had people in your life that have had cancer, unfortunately, but there's either you put the catheter here or you take it in a form of a pill. And so I had decided to take it in the form of a pill. So what had happened by then is my oncologist, bless him, and bless all the doctors, by the way, I think there was lack of information that was given, but we didn't know that. I didn't know that. And that's why it was so important to have someone here, my sister in particular. She was my biggest advocate, because obviously my brain is shut down. I can't think. I'm in survival. I'm like fighting this, right? So it was so important to have someone here to actually help with that. And so the radiation went well. There was a lot of unfortunate consequence that happened because of that, especially around this part of the body. And then there was the chemotherapy. So when I started with the chemotherapy, I started taking the pill. Oh, sorry, no, there was the first day where so it's through IV. And that's when I started having the side effects of chemotherapy, which, by the way, I did not lose my hair. I think that's a question that everyone wants to ask. I did not lose my hair, alhamdulillah. But unfortunately, I had what I think was 10 or 20% of the world population have. Like, I have this weird genetic 2% of the population. Okay, so I'm even rare, right? So I have a genetic mutation that makes my body reject the kind of chemo that they give. The thing is, the doctors couldn't, I mean, I'm sure they could have figured it out, but they didn't. And so I started having spasms here. I couldn't breathe. I started having spasms in my right arm, my right leg. So imagine 30-year-old woman, I was super fit, super healthy, and I'm getting this reaction. So I get dropped, we go home, right? And then I stay home, I call in a friend to help out. But I was almost half paralyzed from my body. And I'm like, okay, well, this is part of the fight. Unfortunately, they don't tell you these things. And it's okay. By then I was like, I had accepted it. But so I'm home and I'm popping the chemo pill every day. And it was courses of 14 days. And I think I couldn't complete the first course. By day 10, my body had completely rejected the chemotherapy. So my tummy looked like a 6 month pregnant woman. And so my mom, bless her, was with me, but it was just so hard. She couldn't handle. I was screaming, I was crying, I was in so much pain. There was only so much pain meds that I could be given. And so my sister picks me up and we go to the emergency. They take me in immediately. And that's when the second, or I'd say the first part of my nightmare started, because I was admitted, I think within 48 hours in the ICU. And so I spent 3 weeks in ICU, where until today, I can't even describe what it's like to be there, because I was isolated, I was alone. I think at some point there was a part where they told my sister that you guys gotta start praying. Sorry. Yeah, so basically all the medicine, they had tried all sorts of medicine and it wasn't working. And so they actually had to break this news to my sister to say, well, all you have now is prayers, because we can't do much about it. And so I am 2.5 years in remission, but this part of the story is still always hard to say, because alhamdulillah, obviously I'm super grateful to be here. It didn't take me cancer to realize how grateful I am for my life, but unfortunately when you reach a stage where my family is being told this news, it's hard. I was gonna go. The thing is, what's interesting is I didn't know that. I felt it, my body was shutting down. I think I had morphine, and there was so much fight and nightmare that my sister was going through that I didn't know, because I was locked in a room and I had no idea. But the thing is, my body was feeling it. And so when she told me that 2 weeks later, after I had left the ICU, I started looking at my WhatsApp and the messages I was sending on the day they told that news to my sister. And I realized I was sending weird messages. I think I was so high on morphine that I was just like hallucinating things, right? But yeah, so that was 3 weeks in the ICU. I think, alhamdulillah, they got a medicine from the UK, I think it was, the US, that had to come within 24 hours. And alhamdulillah, it did come. And that's literally what saved my life, right? So by that point, I think we're now on the 5th of December. I missed my son's birthday, which was super, super hard. You best believe now every birthday I'm like going crazy here. But yeah, it was just 3 weeks of hell, of a nightmare, fighting this, which was not expected by the doctors, right? And so I leave the hospital. I think by then I was a walking skeleton, because the amount of weight I had lost. Because a big information I forgot to mention actually is, for this kind of cancer, you can't, they had told me I had to stop eating. So literally my diet, morning, lunch, and dinner was this, for like a solid, up until the chemo, even after, like I had to have like clear liquid diet, which was disgusting. And that created a level of trauma as well in my brain, in my relationship with food later. But yeah, so by this stage, we're now in December, and then, comes January, and unfortunately, khalas, my doctors were like, we can't give you chemotherapy because your body's not responding to it. And so they do medical tests. I even signed a form because they were doing a mini case study on me, because I was such a rare reaction to this chemo. And so I do a colonoscopy, and alhamdulillah, the cancer was gone. And we couldn't believe it. Even the doctor was like, we didn't know, obviously it was gone fully. We still had to do surgery, but we didn't know. There was no tumor left. When we look at the pictures, there was nothing left. And so, by then I'm like, okay, so now we have to go with the surgery. We're now 23rd of Jan. And so for this kind of cancer, I don't know if you guys have had people that have had this specific kind of cancer, colorectal. So you know that most people that have surgery usually have an ostomy bag, right? Either temporary or for life. And they kept on telling me from the get-go, they're like, listen, you need to prepare yourself. You're gonna have it. It's going to be temporary, yeah, but still, it's a bit of a shit adjustment, right? And so I had been preparing myself mentally since September of 22 until the surgery. Up until the surgery, a week before, I get a small tattoo here to practice where the ostomy bag is going to fall, like all of these weird things that no one teaches you how to deal with. And so I go there, and alhamdulillah, the surgery went so well that I did not need an ostomy bag. So I left the surgery that they had been preparing me for so many months, telling me, you're going to have an ostomy bag, and I ended up not having one, which was a miracle. And so that's part of my story. It's essentially that how I beat the odds twice, interestingly, right? Like the first time with me having this weird genetic mutation, right? The chemo not going as planned. I couldn't complete the chemo. I still healed from cancer. I did not need an ostomy bag, alhamdulillah. And so I think it was 2-3 weeks after the surgery, I had the amazing news that I was cancer-free. Alhamdulillah. Thank you so much. And so yeah, obviously there's so many lessons that I would love to share, but I think if I were to end the story, and thank you so much for being so patient listening through it all, but I think there's so many, but I will end with acceptance, because I wish I didn't have to go through cancer to learn acceptance and letting go and lack of control and just like accepting life for what it brings you, whatever it is, whatever comes your way is meant to come your way, and whatever is supposed to happen is supposed to happen the way it's supposed to be. And so the concept of acceptance and letting go and just resignation and just not giving up, but giving in and trusting in the process is, I think, the best lesson that I learned from the cancer. So, and there's much more, but I don't have enough time to share, but I'll end it with this. So, no, I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot. So I'll end it with this, but thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much.